Oh, hello, hello. Still trying to make sure that all the things are correct. Um, if anyone is there, I see there's a thing by Amar. If you're there, hello. Let me know if you can hear me, or I guess if you can't, that's a problem. I think it should be working. Hello, Max. You can hear me. Okay, good. I don't know. Hopefully, I don't know if there's the audio is. I mean, the audio is going to be bad because it's a little echoey in this room, so I apologize in advance. But hopefully things are okay. I don't know how the audio is with the game volume. Um, Let me know. I forgot how little music there is uh, in Stardew, so I may put on some lo-fi beats. Yet. Give me 1 second if I know that. I hope everybody is doing well. I hope if you're in holidays right now, I hope those holidays are good for you. Did I do an undergrad in math? I did not do an under. Well, I ended up with a minor in math. Uh, that is a long story. Is there? There should be lo-fi Christmas beats playing right now. I don't know if there is or isn't for you. um, hopefully that works. Let me know if the audio levels are not great. Um, yeah, so yeah, now I can apologize for the rocky start. I don't stream a lot, so this stuff's always new to me. What did I? So it's been a long time since I played a bit quiet. So I did my undergrad in physics. Physics. Well, eventually I ended up in physics. But yeah, physics primarily. I did do a lot of math courses, much more than the physics degree required. Um, and um, However, I think I was about 2 courses away from doing something like a double major in math. But it would have required me to stay an entire year just to do those 2 courses, and I felt, given what I wanted to do, it wasn't worth it. So I didn't. I didn't end up pursuing that in total, which I think ultimately made sense given what I did end up doing. But yeah, so it was an undergrad in physics with a minor in math essentially. What has piqued my interest today? What do you mean by today? Like specifically today? Not. I've been cleaning the entire day, so. Uh, um, or do you mean kind of like um, in general, education-wise, what has piqued my interest? Um, I'll interpret the question in that latter way because it's probably a more interesting way to interpret it than what I was doing today specifically. This week, yeah. I was actually just talking with a friend regarding because obviously the most recent video was on chaos theory. Um, there So chaos theory has been done on YouTube quite a bit. Um, However, I actually haven't seen too many videos that talk about how do you actually use chaos theory, like as an application. Um, and that was kind of so one of the things that I wanted to tackle with the newest video, with the cat purring video, is just showing. Oh yeah, I forgot there's an energy meter in this. Uh-oh, that's not going to be good. One of the things I wanted to tackle was, oh man, sorry, 1 second. Now I'm just realizing that there's now Stardew Valley has decided to play music. What was I saying? So one of the things that I wanted to tackle with the video was actually just showing, even in like at a higher level, just showing how these things are actually used in a more real world setting. Like if somebody was to ask you, here's a data set, check if this is or isn't chaotic. How do you actually do that? Because that's actually not covered a lot from what I've seen in kind of popular science YouTube videos and stuff like that. And which I think is a shame, because I think techniques like the shadow manifold technique are super cool, but it's not something that I'd ever seen in, like, I'd seen chaos theory and stuff like that in undergrad, but I had never seen something like the shadow manifold technique. And I think it's kind of a shame, given how interesting it is, that something like that isn't covered. So to answer your what has piqued my interest question, it's kind of figuring out how to, sorry, there's a hair in my mouth. Just figuring out how to apply these techniques that we learn about in undergrad and stuff like that, but in a real world setting. That's kind of the thing that I've been really interested in the last little while, because there's so many things that we learn in undergrad that when we that are really cool, and then you can ask like, okay, but what does that actually mean in terms of like application, and how do we actually use it? And so just figuring out how to do something like that has really been of interest to me lately. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff there. Trying to get my bearings straight here. And that's because in order to actually do some of the stuff, I have to like actually, because I've never, a lot of the stuff that I'd actually never done myself. In order to do some stuff like that, I need to go do some research on my own and do some like literature search, and that's what got me that's what led me to a bunch of papers on using chaos theory for seizure analysis and stuff like that. And then when I was talking about this video with some of my research group members, one of the professors in the group also mentioned how chaos theory is used, or at least mentioned applying it to heartbeat data. And I thought that was a really cool idea. I almost pivoted the entire idea to looking at heartbeat recordings, which I may look at like at some point in the future, because it's really interesting. Like the entire the entire theory of how EKG is used to map out kind of like in a sonar kind of way. It was so interesting. Like I almost pivoted the entire video to that, but I figured, okay, maybe I'm a little too far ahead in the cats, so maybe that's not a great idea. But it's super interesting, and that's maybe something that I kind of want to like look up in the future. So yeah, just a lot of data analysis techniques of like real world recordings. So Amar's question. So the strange attractors in CatPer, what are they, or what the state? Yeah, I mean the best answer I can give there is that I'm not sure. Um, or can they not be interpreted? I'm not sure how whether or not they can be interpreted in that literal way. I think you'd need more analysis to do. I mean, like I said in the video, I was actually fairly skeptical that it even was chaotic to begin with. I still think that it's kind of possibly due to noise. But like I said in the video, everything that I kept trying kept giving me that it was that it was chaotic. So I was really confused by that. Um, but yeah, I'm not like if it is chaotic, then I don't know if that means that there necessarily is a strange attractor. I don't remember enough from my nonlinear dynamics courses to be able to say that definitively. I don't know if it's an if and only if statement is essentially what I'm trying to say there. I've never seen any videos that actually apply chaos theory either. What are some of the other applications that you've thought about? Is the EKG recording also subject to noise? How do you deal with that? Because they're graphs. Yeah, I mean every real thing is subject to noise, but but I mean these are like medical devices that are used to save people's lives essentially. So they're just built with much higher standards than a microphone would be. And also just the different sources of noise are very different, and that's why in the video that recording looks so smooth. I suspect there's also probably some filtering going on as well. However, I just used like the raw data off the PTB data set, so I'm not entirely certain, but I would suspect that that would be somewhat true. That entire data set, by the way, is super cool. It's super cool. It's from I think 1999 or something like that, but I mean that doesn't matter. But it's something like 100 different patients with 40 different controls, like 40 control patients, so healthy patients. Um, and so this is now kind of segueing into Aryaman Patel's question. So that like I said, that database, something like 100 different recordings of just EKG from patients, 40 different control subjects, and they the one thing that which is cool in and of itself, I think that's really cool. One thing that's not clear to me in that data set, and this is why I ultimately decided to not go down the route of pivoting the video last minute to looking at heartbeats, is because control doesn't always necessarily mean, like a control patient doesn't always necessarily mean a healthy patient. In a lot of situations, for example, in seizure analysis, you kind of have to use what you like. It's hard to get patients to come in and volunteer their time if they're healthy. So a lot of the time, control patients are actually patients that are in for some reason, and they've consented to their data being used, and they can't find anything that's like obviously wrong with them. And so, because of that, even though there are something like 40 control patients, there are some in there that their heartbeats look somewhat chaotic, and maybe they had like a cup of coffee or something like that. It's not entirely clear. So the distinction between their like chaos and the smoothness of one and versus the other was not as clear cut as I would have liked it to be. And I think this is also partially why I said this in the description. I didn't say it in the video itself, but a lot of the theory of using chaos to study heartbeat recordings is not done on the EKG signal itself, but rather what they do is that they try to find the heart rate variability. So how much your heart rhythm kind of fluctuates in terms of the time between beats. And ideally, in a healthy patient, you would have a little bit of fluctuation, but you don't want that to be, sorry, you don't want zero fluctuation. You want at least a little bit, but you don't want too much. And the reason being kind of like you don't want, if it had zero fluctuation, it would be a very stiff heart, so it wouldn't be able to like respond to different changes in the body. Like, I don't know, your heartbeat changes like times all constantly throughout the day. So you do want some variability. Um, so this is, yeah, this is just kind of expanding a little. What other applications have you? I've been kind of reading up on this heart rate, heartbeat, heart chaos analysis, which is just super super cool. I yeah, maybe at some point in the future I will kind of um, expand on that with a future video, because I think it's just fascinating. But especially the way that people the way that people actually measure these heartbeats are just super fascinating in and of itself. It's kind of like earthquake detection, if you know a little bit about that. It's very similar to that, which I thought was really cool. Yeah, I don't know if that, hopefully that kind of answers the question. If you've never seen one of my live streams, this will hopefully I don't stream often, but hopefully this doesn't shatter the illusion, the not David illusion of the very. I mean, I kind of tried to shatter it a little bit in the network video. What other videos do you want to make? That's a good question. Um, so I think I really like network theory. I think it's I think it's going to be hard to top my, at least for me, like for me to kind of top my YouTube network video. But I really, really like network theory, and I think there's some really cool and amazing things that you can look at with network theory that a lot of people haven't really talked about. Not because you can't, it's just because it's a lot. I find that a lot of the things that people talk about in YouTube videos, like in YouTube education videos, are things that are like commonly researched. So for example, you can use network theory study um, to study the power grid networks, and I think that's super cool. But a lot of the reason why a lot of people talk about that is simply because that is what a lot of research is being done in. And I think that's a little bit of a shame in terms of like, it's when you're making YouTube videos, like you have this new freedom to actually search things that you normally wouldn't in academia. And so that's something that I want to try to focus on doing, is not just cover things that are already within the literature, but actually just kind of like do things for fun that you wouldn't do in an academic setting. So I do want to make a lot more. I do want to make network videos, but I also don't want to become a channel that only makes network videos. And this is why I purposefully, this video was not about networks, whereas the last video wasn't about networks, and this one I deliberately chose it to not be about networks, because there's like cool things that are like cool out there even beyond just network theory. I should probably start planting my. I probably should have started that already, actually. So yeah, I want to make network videos. I want to make things that are also not network videos. Now, what I was talking about this last night, and I'll get to your question, Amar, in a second. I was at a friend's house last night, and I was talking about what I actually really want to do right now, because making these videos takes a long time. So sometimes I do need a bit of a week break in between things. What I really want to do is just like make a video about my hot take anime takes, or movie takes or something like that, and just make like a second channel where I can just be like, hey guys, I have opinions on Hunter x Hunter, for example. um, Not because I want to make those kind of videos. I think those kind of videos will get old. It's just strictly right now, I'm just like, I just need like a week-long break from science videos, because I mean I do research in my as the actual job and then and then research for the video. So sometimes you need a bit of a break to get away from to get away from research. Top 10 networks in anime. Hell yeah. Actually, there are some animes that have some that have network theory, and then one of the anime that actually um, there is going to be kind of like a running joke for it in this video, but I ended up cutting it. If anybody has watched or played quote unquote Steins Gate, there's going to be a lot of Steins Gate references in the Chaos video. I decided to cut it though because it's been a long time since I went through the Steins Gate visual novel, and I was like, maybe I don't remember it as well as I. And I was like, I'll leave that for a future video. So I don't know. Maybe expect the chaos theory of Steins Gate, which more recently I discovered actually there's a lot of really cool chaos theory that in Steins Gate that I didn't realize was in there, or rather at the time I was like, oh, I think they're playing a little bit fast and loose with the rules of chaos. But in actuality, I've recently read papers where they incorporate that. The biggest one being that it's this. I've just completely stopped playing the game. The biggest one being um, this idea that if you nudge a chaotic system sufficiently small enough, then you're not going to the points will stay together. Now, in classical chaos, in the way that it was originally derived, like in the Lorentz system, I don't think that's possible. I think it is always going. They're always going to diverge. However, there's been like research papers, especially in the field of neural networks, and this is fairly recent. So I don't think there's even like there's not even like Wikipedia pages on this. Where they call it the flux tube of stability, and the idea is essentially this: is that if you perturb, in this case, they're looking at neurons. If you perturb a neuron sufficiently weakly, it's actually not going to cause any sort of divergence. And they found this in their neural networks, and they wrote a paper about it. I don't remember the name of the paper though. And this is a concept that was in Steins Gate that I was like, yeah, it's not really chaos, but more recently there's been some papers. Is that still chaos? Actually, I don't know. I think you could maybe kind of philosophically argue that maybe it's not. I'm not sure on that, but yeah. Sorry, Amar, I got way sidetracked. I kind of got confused at a certain point in the video. You said something like real life, we don't have rules, I think. I don't think I said that in the most recent video. Maybe I said that in a long time video long ago, but if I said that, I probably would have been referring to differential equations. Yeah. You said chaosism is tested by simulating, but how do you with that? Yeah, so that's a great question actually, and that's something that I wanted to go into in the video, and realized that in order to kind of really answer that question would take like another 5 minutes. And so I decided to cut that part. And it's if you notice, it's a little bit hand wavy at the moment, but essentially the way that you do it, and this is why it requires so much. So the cat purr data, and this is why I only did it for. I love Stardew Valley a lot. I kind of have to like stop myself from playing it because I will waste a lot of time in Stardew Valley. So the idea here relies on a couple of concepts from physics, namely one that, and this is, I do talk about this, is that the curves can't cross one another. And a consequence of the fact that the curves can't cross one another, and the fact that this thing has to do with like the density of these trajectories in space and stuff like that, um, essentially the points that you pick, like in the Caterfly, it's different in the Lorentz attractor, because in the Lorentz attractor you can just simulate it, and so you can just pick points. But in the Caterfly, it's just the data set. So you have to pick the points from the data, and you're using the assumption that the points, if that the curves can't cross one another, and this is why this is why it's valid. So essentially, you make the Caterfly. Sorry, I've already already got it very distracted. You make the Caterfly, and then you pick a point on the Caterfly. So in the animation, sometime towards the end, I pick a point and then I take points from there. Those points are coming directly from the data. And this is why it requires quite a bit of data. So it's 2 minutes. Yeah, if it crosses itself, it's got to be periodic, which is necessarily not chaotic. So at the so the cat per recording is 2 minutes long, but remember it's sampled at something like 444 44 kilohertz. Is that the number? I don't remember, but it's actually quite a lot of data points, and this is why the analysis works. And this is also why I wasn't able to do it for more than one cat, because you need something like, you need like the cat to just be there, sitting around for a straight 2 minutes, just purring for a long time, and that is pretty difficult to convince a cat to do. So that's why I wasn't able to do that. That's still kind of a bit of a hand wavy. 44.1, yeah, something like that, yeah. So it's a lot of data points. It's and that's why the Caterfly you can do the analysis with. I actually wasn't able to even import all those data points into Blender because Blender crashed, so it was a much smaller subset. Hello there, hello. I hope everybody, I think I said this at the start, but I hope if you're on like a holiday break or something like that, I hope your holiday break is treating you well. If you're not on a holiday break, I hope it's treating you even better because you deserve it even more. Yeah, so that's a bit of still a hand wavy explanation. I do kind of want to make a follow-up video on some of the more nuances on chaos on the secondary channel here, because there's actually quite a lot of super interesting stuff, including using information theory to get an estimate for the delay. That actually doesn't work for the Caterfly for particular mathematical reasons. I think if you know what autoregressive signals are, I think the cat purring is autoregressive, and the information theoretic technique doesn't work for autoregressive signals, as far as I've read on it. But it's still really cool, the fact that you can use information theory to do this thing that you normally wouldn't, and so there's this connection between chaos and information theory that I think would be kind of cool to potentially talk about. Sorry, 1 second. Sorry, I bumped the mic. What was I talking about? I don't remember exactly. But yeah. What was I talking? Yeah, I'm still very a little bit lost on. Still not very good at the whole streaming thing. I apologize. I thought it was not about, but that's the points. I thought it was interesting that you decided not to talk much about the Lorentz attractor, because that's the points that the data tend. Yeah. The reason why the tree. Yeah, I feel like the reason why I didn't spend a lot of time talking about the attractor itself is because I think that could make an interesting video in and of itself, because I think there's a lot of like this weird mysticism surrounding the word attractor. Not mysticism, like that's not really the correct word, but I remember, at least when I was in undergrad and I was like looking at these kind of like words that were popping up, and it was like, oh, the strange attractor and all of this stuff. And I think that's really where that word comes from, because that's not literally speaking, but I think the public consciousness of the word attractor comes from the strange attractor. There's this association when people think attractor, they think strange attractor. But that's there's way more different types of attractors, all of which are extremely simple to explain and stuff like that. And so I kind of wanted to make a video on just being like, hey guys, like, strange attractor, really cool. Like, we'll dive into it. But let's kind of step back and demystify it a little bit, because it's also, I just want to mention, if Renok is still here, who said I love Stardew Valley, I apologize for how badly I'm playing. This is, I hopefully it's understood that the game is secondary, because I don't know how to. I have a newfound respect for streamers who are able to play the game and talk at the same time, because I cannot. Yeah, so this is why I didn't really talk about the attractor aspect, because I feel like if I was going to bring it up, it would start adding this, and this is, I accidentally did bring it up, and that was actually an accident. So I put it in the little I put a little caption in there, meaning that, oh, don't worry about this word, because I just felt like that was a can of worms that, if not handled properly, I would be contributing to this notion that it's this weird mystical thing, when in actuality attractor is a really simple thing. It just so happens that because of the famousness of the Lorentz attractor, we've developed this kind of public public mysticism around it. Again, maybe not the right word, but hopefully that kind of makes sense. I remember I need to water the plants at least. Yeah, hopefully that kind of makes sense. But the Lorentz attractor, or the strange attractor more generally, is super cool. Definitely something that I'd like to talk about one day. Hi, Pearson. Hi, I'm a current high school looking to major in physics, and I also do quite a bit of Blender as a set, so your videos are awesome. Oh, thank you. I do hope, so if anybody is interested, I'm gonna say something that sounds like a plug, but I promise is not. On my Patreon is, I try to make sure that nothing is behind a paywall, but I do this kind of, I try to do this every 2 weeks or something, like a recommendation of things that I've been somewhat interested in, and all of it's public, so if you want, you can go there. But specifically towards what Pearson is saying here, there was this one video that came out by Louis Zhang, I think is how you say his name, if I remember correctly. If any of you are Brian David Gilbert fans, Louis Zhang was the guy who collaborated with Brian David Gilbert on the Breezy Slide video. So he's featured in that video. And he made a video, I think around the same time as my network video in YouTube, about the ways that he uses Blender. And that video was like a complete, like, eye-opener / game changer for me in terms of how I approach Blender. Because I've been using Blender for about a year now. I don't consider myself particularly good at Blender, but I can make things that look pretty enough. But the things that he was doing were just so much simpler, and yet the visual quality of those things was just in a completely different kind of league of their own. That this is, I've been obsessed with that video, and a lot of the things that I learned in that video I applied to the cat purring video. So for example, the cat at the very start of the video, that's something that I would not have been able to do prior to watching Louis Zhang's video on how he uses Blender and texturing and stuff like he I think he did to Blender for yeah, this is kind of funny. I think I hadn't thought of it this way up until right now, but I think he did to for me to Blender, for me, as I was just literally talking about the demystifying the notion of the attractor or something like that, like using texturing and stuff like that in Blender was this kind of like scary thing to me. And Louis Zhang just completely demystified it. I don't remember the name of the video. It's using how I make videos in Blender or how I use Blender or something like that. It's not a tutorial. It does assume you have prior knowledge in Blender. But yeah, holy moly, that video. Oh yeah, I gotta. Oh man, it's been so long since I played this game. I should start selling stuff. Yeah, so highly recommend Louis Zhang's video. I'm not seeing. I see that there's Amar and Pearson. You just put a. I don't know if you put a link in there. I don't see it on my end, or at least it's not showing up in the chat. Maybe the OBS chat doesn't show links on my end. But yeah, it sounds like you two found it. Like I said, it's listed in one of the inspiration blog things on my Patreon. So if you want to go onto the Patreon, yeah, I think OBS does block links. If you go on the Patreon, you can just scroll. I think it was like a month ago that I posted that one. Like I said, not a plug for the Patreon, just kind of showing that, just saying that there is this kind of series that I try to do. How I approach illustration in Blender. That's exactly it. Yeah. I just post these little kind of blog things on my current interests or current inspirations in using Blender, because I get comments on, oh, you know, your Blender is so nice or something like that, and I am very mediocre at Blender, and I think it's just a matter of making it look pretty, and but there's easy ways to do that, and I think Louis Zhang's video especially showed me just a completely new approach to rendering and stuff like that. So I cannot recommend that video enough. Yeah, sorry, I'm just literally just gushing about it here. That's something I love, it is that you can make something that takes 2 hours and someone. Yeah. I don't know if I would say the word love, but definitely I have a love-hate relationship with that, that's for sure. Blender is just going to Durdulek, Durdludek. I apologize 10 times over for how I pronounced that. Blender, getting into Blender is really you do essentially, the first step to getting into Blender, unfortunately, is finding a tutorial that just jives with you. And that is a really hard part. I think the most kind of well-known tutorial for Blender is his name I don't remember. It's the donut tutorial. If you search Google, if you Google donut Blender tutorial, that's by far the most famous one. I personally don't like that tutorial, but I think that says less about the quality of the tutorial itself and more that it just wasn't my learning style. I put and this is, again, it was one of the quote-unquote blog Patreon posts that I put a link to the first tutorial that I did use, which was by a fella named Imfezia, something like that. Blender Guru, yeah. Imfezia, and he did this kind of like 3-hour-long video on low polygon modeling in Blender and how you get started in it. And even though I don't really do a lot of low poly stuff, I found that the fact that it was all condensed into one video, something about it just really helped me learn. Even though I didn't watch it all in like one go, just something about it all being in like one place really helped me learn. And so unfortunately, it is really the case where you just kind of have to sample some videos and just be like, oh, this is the one that's going to help me in the way that I want. I like to learn or something like that. That being said, because Pearson, do you use Blender? Yeah, you use Blender as well. So I don't know, Pearson, how much, or anybody else in the audience, how much experience you've had with the coding aspect of Blender, because Blender essentially runs on Python. So if you know Python, you can do a lot of stuff in Blender, and that's how a lot of my animations are made, are using the Python API, just programming it. The online tutorial kind of ecosystem for Blender Python use, I think, is woefully inadequate currently. There's a couple of good videos, but that's one place where I think Blender and the Blender community, though I mean I don't want to put it on people, like, but that's one place. If I was to make tutorial videos, that's one place that I would potentially focus on. Hello, Squawkiak. Hello. I hope your day is good. So I don't remember if I mentioned this story the last time I streamed. I didn't even get that far, but I do. Yeah, well, the problem is that you kind of need to learn Blender first. Like, you can't do everything in coding. But for example, the Caterfly itself was made using the coding. Because I needed to like import things and then make the mesh to actually get the Caterfly to show up. Otherwise, it'd just be a bunch of points, like, and like connect those points all together. But after you've made the thing that you want to work with, then you just use Blender as normal. Yeah. So that's so. Oh yeah. So the story that I was gonna say is that originally, Not David actually was a Blender tutorial channel. I was trying to do something like Blender for scientists kind of videos, where I think the first several videos or something like that I was doing was on how to make what I thought at the time was a realistic neuron, though I'm kind of looking at it now and I'm like, those aren't really realistic neurons. Like, usually when we think of neurons, it's kind of like there's that popular science image of these like floating balls that are like floating in space, and that's just not an accurate depiction of neurons. And so I wanted to do something that was like a little bit more realistic, although looking back I'm like, it could have been more realistic. So I was making videos on, oh hell yeah, I'm gonna adopt this cat. All right, y'all, what are we naming the cat? Sorry, let's do some chat engagement. What are we naming this cat? I'll pick the one that I think is the best, or the one that comes in first if people are reluctant to start suggesting things. Dionysus. I'm a little reluctant to name it Dionysus, mainly because I've been playing Shin Megami Tensei, if anybody knows Shin Megami Tensei or the Persona games, and I think Dionysus is a demon in that game, which is gave me a very hard time in very hard time in, I think, Persona 3 at one point. Or no, it wouldn't have been there. I don't remember. I have a bad memory from Dionysus in the Persona games. Crazy Mad Scientists, Turtle Duck. What about from Steins Gate? We'll do Congru. We'll do Congru. I think that makes sense. Something comes up. Name it not dog. Okay, yeah. I kind of have to. Yeah. Okay. You have a point. How do I go back here? I have to fit the theme here. Not dog. Okay. I think yeah. Cat, you win this one. Not dog. Does she say anything? Well, little not dog, you be a good kitty now, okay. I like that. I like that name. Oh yeah, Laurent. Okay, this Laurent with a T, Laurent TZ or whatever is caused me so much confusion in undergrad. I wish that two of the most famous physicists weren't Lorentz and Lorenz. That is, yeah. Pearson said a comment that I wanted to follow up on. The only time I've been using code extraction was using ChatGPT to create complicated arrays when it was pretty good at. So this is something that I think it's one of the. I talked a little bit about this in the last stream. So if by chance you were there, just the topic of like ChatGPT and its application, at least in the context of video making, and we were talking about this last time. And since then, I don't know how many of you guys watch hbomberguy, but his most recent video on plagiarism and stuff like that, and he has a really good section about it towards the end regarding ChatGPT and especially towards the beginning of the video, content mills and stuff like that. And we were talking about this last time, how ChatGPT, if you want to use it to write a script, it is like a script for a video. It is awful. It's really, it's shockingly bad. And it can't really match tone very well. I mean, aside from just getting things wrong to begin with, but it can't match things. It can't match the tone that you want to set very well. Hello, Joe. So we were talking about does AI have any sort of kind of use in video making? And I think with regards to script, you will be able to tell whether or not a video was made, like whether or not the script was made by whether it was made by AI. But it is a little bit useful. I have found it useful in coding for Blender, and not not amazing. But I think that says a little bit more about how lacking the Blender community's kind of Python video tutorials is currently. Hello, yes, we see you, Joe. So at least going back to Pearson's point, there is a place for ChatGPT, at least in with regards to that coding and stuff like that, especially in Blender. I kind of agree. I feel like I do like the idea for brainstorming. I kind of agree though that it does seem to have like gotten maybe like I've become a little bit more discerning in terms of like, you know, when it came out, I was like the novelty kind of blinded me a little bit to it possibly. But I do really feel like it's gotten worse. And I don't really know where that's coming from. Again, like I said, I think it's not good at writing scripts. I think brainstorming ideas is potentially a use for it, but I do find that it has gotten quite a bit worse at it. I think it also doesn't fit my videos in particular because, as I was saying, I don't know how long ago at this point, um, I'm trying to do things that I haven't really seen covered in literature. So, for example, the chaos analysis of cat purring is not something that's been covered in literature, which means that it's going to be like there's no existing literature from which ChatGPT can pull from. And that's been kind of true for all of my videos so far. And so it really hasn't worked out any sort of like trying to use it. Like I even tried to use it to like at one point to just kind of make the tone a little bit more engaging. And even that was really, really bad. It would be, I was like, I handed it a script that I was like pretty happy with. And then I was like, I wonder if it can be a little bit more engaging. And I was like, hey, ChatGPT, can you like match the tone, like this kind of dry humor, but make it a little bit more engaging? And its response was something like, hello, fellow science adventurers. Are you ready to learn about topic X? And I'm like, that is, I don't know where you're pulling that from. um, uh, oh, hello, Drew. Sorry, just catching up with the, because it tries to generate names, using it to learn how to use newbie. Yeah, using it to learn APIs. I haven't used it for. I didn't use it for the YouTube video. Sorry, the YouTube network video, and I'm curious how that would have been. I wonder if it's any good at that, because it's probably scraped all the Google stuff already. So I am curious how that would have looked like. It's trying too hard to be a search engine. I do wonder if ChatGPT will at some point, or rather AI will replace like conventional search engines. They're already kind of doing that, right? Like, and it kind of makes sense. It's like, hey, robot, can you find me a link to this thing? But not like in a Siri kind of way. I just mean like in a search where like in Google, like for example, if Google replaced its search algorithms with just an AI that delivers you the results. I really don't like the idea of, I think that's a really bad way for kind of us for search engines to go, because search engines are already dominated by like the first 3 links, right? Like if you don't find your answer within the first 3 links of a Google search, it's like you fix your search query or whatever. You're like, oh, I must have searched this wrong. And so the idea of like now ChatGPT or something being like, oh yes, this is the perfect link for you. You've used it for recipes. Has that worked? Did you get anything good at it? Can you elaborate on that? I'm really curious. What a ChatGPT driven recipe would look like from that. I do also wonder, I don't know enough about the mechanisms of ChatGPT, but I do wonder how much of what you say is fed into the model to build new results. This is to your point that like gamer culture has infected it or something like that. And I'm just like wondering, is that potentially like, regardless of what you think of like what gamer culture is, like that has, that'll depend on from person to person. I'm not saying like it's a good or bad thing. I'm saying like, is that a thing that can happen? Like, can a group of people influence the result of the ChatGPT output if they tried hard enough or something like that? I would really hope not. It made a mean banana banana bread. Oh yeah, and I was gonna say, this is why I make the effort to occasionally thank ChatGPT. To just be like, thank you for your help, because if the results are fed into the AI model, I want it to know that I'm one of the I want it to treat me nice. um, Drew, is there like can is there um banana bread's pretty easy is the thing. Um, but I mean, yeah, I'll ask it for a banana bread one day. Um, but doesn't Google use? Yeah, Google uses like neural network. I'm sure they use neural networks. I'm just wondering, like, I guess what I meant is that you just completely replace like the Google kind of search result list, strictly with just like it's a response from some sort of AI that's like, I think this is the website that will do the thing that's best for you, and you don't even like get a list of, well, I mean, maybe you get a list of things, but it's not like not pages and pages long. I just mean like it's a couple of items that are just like, oh, I shouldn't that's more what I meant. Like, I'm sure they already use neural networks. I just mean like a response type thing. Didn't people get it to spit out its training data recently? I hadn't heard about that. Hello, not dog. That'd be interesting. Um, that'd be interesting. I wonder what that would look like. I doubt that you could do it in the public version. Maybe that would be a thing that requires the paid version or something like that. I think the influence is more how people in the back end change. So, I mean, it's yeah. Like I said, I don't know enough about the topic to be able to opine on what it is it or isn't doing. And I think there's very few people that do know. But if you asked it to repeat a word forever, it just randomly started saying, huh, interesting. Yeah, I don't know. The thing about machine learning, and maybe at some point, actually, I had an idea for one of the original ideas I had for the cat video was actually machine learning related. But the thing is that I just don't have like a whole lot of interest in machine learning, strictly just because it is just kind of a black box, and it's like, oh, here, I used this technique, but I can't really say much more about it. And admittedly, a lot of my videos don't delve too deeply into the techniques themselves, I admit that. But at least it's kind of like possible to learn a little bit about it. But if I was like, oh yeah, I used this machine learning technique, and it's like, well, that's the end of as far as you can inquire regarding it. Favorite video games? Oh man, you've opened up a can of worms there. I unfortunately haven't had a chance to play a lot of video games recently, and it's probably changed quite a bit from year to year. I would say that like my first favorite video game was Golden Sun. If anybody's played Golden Sun, that was like my first one. And more recently, I have been really into the Persona / Shin Megami Tensei games. If anybody likes Persona, let me know. Big Persona fan. Celeste is pretty high up there. I used to try to do a little bit of speedrunning in Celeste. Which last stream after the YouTube network video, I tried to play Celeste while streaming, and you could barely tell that I'd ever played the game, let alone like tried to do speed runs of Celeste. So this is why today we're playing Stardew Valley, which is much easier to, even if I don't remember or I'm not really giving it my full attention. Yeah, I don't remember what else I would consider like my favorite games currently. Environmental Station Alpha, if anybody's ever heard of that game. It's a Metroidvania, released around the same time as Axiom Verge and Hollow Knight. I've played all three of those games. I love all three of those games, but I would say that for me personally, Environmental Station Alpha is my favorite Metroidvania. I don't know what else. Half-Life, big Half-Life fan. Halo as well, like the original 3 Halos. Yeah, those games. I used to play games a lot, and they have really influenced my videos, which I think is what slightly sets the videos apart. Of course, aside from like the Blender stuff, but recently, just because YouTube actually takes up so much of my time, I really haven't had a chance to play too much. Although I did recently pick up Shin Megami Tensei 3 for the Switch, and so in the evenings I get to play about an hour or so of SMT3. Okay, sorry. Nesta asked, how do you come up with your video ideas? I wish I had a answer that was like, oh, I go through this set of steps. But I don't really have an approach to coming up with video ideas. Oh man, I think the sorry, I'm just trying to see. It just looks like there's I have the stream on like a separate monitor, but it looks like it's really delayed. I don't know what the most recent thing you guys are seeing. I just went into the store, so please let me know if you see me going into the store. That way I can see how far behind. Because on the second monitor, it's showing that I'm all the way back at the that little Pelican Town hall broken building thing. So right now I'm in the store and I'm about to talk to this guy. So let me know how far behind the stream is if you can in any way. Seeing it now. Okay, so it's not as far behind as what I'm seeing on the second monitor. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Sorry, so going back to Nesta's question. I don't have a method for coming up with video ideas. I don't know that there objectively is one. And I think that is a problem in some sense, in the sense that I had a little bit of a after I think I saw, does YouTube make your living, or do you ask? So this is kind of related. Does YouTube make your living? No, I was a grad student, so I was making money being paid for research. So YouTube does give some money, but it's too inconsistent, and it's not, even if it was consistent, it's not a lot of money anyway. So after the YouTube network video, I had like small little panic attacks for like a straight week, because I was like, I don't know what the next video is going to be. And I don't know that I'm ever going to be able to top the YouTube network video. And I still feel that way. I'm gonna go talk to the townspeople right now. I think that video, even if it doesn't have as much views as the video, I think is as good as I'm, like, that was my peak. And like I'm super happy with how the cat video turned out. I really enjoyed making it and stuff like that. But I think in terms of like connecting to the audience, in terms of audience engagement and stuff like that, and just like, you know, putting a little bit of myself into that video, I think that was the peak. And so that actually caused me to have quite a few panic attacks and like imposter syndrome attacks and stuff like that. And I've spent so much time trying to figure out like what is the next video going to be. And I have like a list, I have a little notepad of like list ideas. But just because it's an idea doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to pan out into a good video. And so the cat purr was on that list, but I'd been kind of like, oh, am I gonna do it on that? And I eventually settled on it. Although it wasn't going to be on chaos, it was going to be on Fourier analysis. And then I kind of realized, I was like, well, Fourier analysis has been done a lot. Physics for the Birds did a really good Fourier analysis video that also used the same analogy that I was going to use, and I was like, well, I can't really bring anything new to this. So I was like, but so that's essentially when I was like, oh wait, there's this chaos theory thing that I've been learning about and maybe trying to apply to my research. What if I did a video on that? And that's kind of how it came about. So unfortunately, there isn't really a good. I don't have an answer. Like a lot of it just kind of falls into my lap, which is not good in terms of it going back to Derd Ludek's question. It's not good in terms of if I did want to make YouTube a career. I need some better method of coming up with video ideas. Yeah, that's essentially the best answer that I can give there. But this kind of feeds into Amar's question: do you plan on doing a post grad? It sounds like hell to me. So I've recently learned that not everybody knows what a post grad is. So just in case you don't know what a post grad is, it's after undergrad you do your master's if you're in like Canada, at least where I am, and then you do a PhD. And then once you finished your PhD, which I have now finished my PhD, you are a doctor and you're done. But you can continue to do a post grad, which is essentially you have essentially most of the responsibilities of a professor. You have the research obligations of a professor, kind of. You don't have to write as many grants, but you get much less pay. And that's essentially what a post grad is. And to answer your question, then, am I going to do one? I don't know. I will likely be doing one for at least a little bit of time, for at least a year, in order to kind of transition from transition from graduate school to, I don't know, maybe industry or something like that. Or if the YouTube thing like really takes off, maybe do that for a couple of years or something like that. Which, you know, you don't want to like build plans around something so uncertain like that. So I'm not going to even try. So I might do a postdoc for a little, or a post grad for a little bit, but my plan is not to stay in post grad. I don't remember. I can never say her name. A Collier Astro. She released a video today actually on how to study physics. She did a really good video on the nightmares of being a postdoc. And she really touched on a lot of things that I had been already thinking about. Cats, if your second monitor stream is delayed, possible that it is watching the stream a few seconds back. Yeah, I'm not going to bother right now, as long as hopefully it looks like it's only a couple of seconds delayed on for you guys, but like when I'm looking at the second monitor, I'm still talking to the fisherman on the second monitor, so it's very far behind. Yeah, that postdoc video was very. Did I just water? No, okay. It was very. It wasn't so much eye-opening as much as it was just kind of reaffirming things that I was already starting to kind of think about. Yeah, she makes some really great videos. Um, Sorry, Nesta, it took a while for me to get to your comment here. About the cat video, the only thing I still don't understand is what it means. Something is when something is chaotic. I understood is what it means when something is chaotic. I understood how to determine it, but I still don't know yet what it means. It just means that I think if you don't want to use the Lorentz example, the Lorentz system, a Collier Astro, yeah, that one. It means so if you don't want to use the Lorentz system, because that I admit that's still a little bit abstract. I kind of wish that there was a little bit less abstract in an example. But if you think of coin flipping, which is something that I read a lot about um, for research for this video. So coin flipping, it looks random, but actually it's effectively entirely deterministic. It just depends, but it's just so sensitive to the little initial conditions that you have from the uncertainty of your hand position and stuff like that. And even though you think that it's like these differences are so small, like, but the chaos factor is the chaos there is that even though it looks like the differences are really small, they're actually enough to cause massive differences. And in the case of a coin flip, those differences are heads or tails. Now, if you know anything about chaos in the context of coin flips, you might be thinking, or even currently writing, coin flips are actually not chaotic. So this is actually why I didn't talk about it, because this is a huge can of worms, and there's a lot of like back and forth as to whether or not coin flips are truly chaotic. And I think from the most recent kind of high profile paper that I've read, or at least the one that's most convincing to me, is that the action of the coin flip itself is not chaotic. This is exemplified by, you can build a machine, for example, that will flip coins for you, and essentially you will get the same result all the time. The chaotic aspect is the collision of the coin with the ground or something like that. And that's where the chaos actually creeps in. So it's not the coin flip itself that's chaotic, but it's the tiny differences in the angle of and the speed of the coin relative to the surface that it's going to hit that produces the chaos, that produces those sensitivity to initial conditions, as we often like to call it. I thought that was really cool reading on that. So if you made, for example, if the ground that you're flipping on is not a flat ground, but is something like a parabolic ground, you get like a heavily chaotic system. Sorry, 1 second. Just making sure that I'm not. I wonder how the postdoc experience differs in different countries. I wonder this quite a lot as well. I've heard that differences in the amount that you get paid can be somewhat substantial. Apparently, Australia pays really, really good for postdocs. But I can't confirm that. The only, yeah, I've only heard it like anecdotally, so I'm not. I can't actually confirm that. But yeah, I don't know. I do know that it can also. I mean, obviously there's differences between countries, but there's also differences between universities and differences between professors, like what kind of expectation, what kind of like environment you're working with. If it's like a publishing house or something where they're just like trying to crank out papers. Would there exist some kind of attractor for the coin flip? Yeah, this is, I think I mentioned this earlier. I don't know if so the reason the Lorentz attractor is chaotic is or the Lorentz butterfly is chaotic is that the attractor that's there, well, there's actually, I believe there's 3 attractors. 2 are limit cycle attractors, but then there's a 3rd one, and that's the strange attractor. I think that's how it was. I don't remember. and the property of the strange attractor is that it's not a point and it's not a line, but rather it's a fractal. And this is something that I don't know the answer to. I'm wondering if something is chaotic. So if the attractor is fractal, then you get chaotic dynamics. But if the dynamics are chaotic, does that imply that you get a fractal attractor? I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer to that. Yeah, I wonder if Strogatz has that. I don't remember. Feels like the flip is chaotic, but well, to Max's thing, I think the counterexample to what Max just said is the fact that you can build a machine that will flip in a consistent in a consistent way. The thing is, though, is that with those machines, obviously they're usually not changing the height of the machine relative to the ground. And so in the paper that I was reading, maybe I should link this paper in the video description, because I think it's a really good paper. I'll need to find it first. What they did was it's a machine that's flipping the coin consistently. And so if you don't change the height of the machine relative to the ground, the coin will flip the same every single time. But as you change the height of the machine, that's where the chaos now starts coming in. Have you ever traveled for Eramis? I don't know what Eramis means. Get into my brain goes, speak your funny word. If I recall, Sturgatz says there's some aperiodicity condition for, yeah. So I think the condition there is that, so there's two conditions. Is it does need to be does it need to be aperiodic? I know it needs to be dense in phase space. Oh, this is a lot of nerd talk now. I wanted to relax. This is nerd talk. Can we go back to talking about video games? No, I'm just kidding. So it has to be dense in phase space. Like the trajectories have to be dense. They have to be, and they have to be the phase space trajectories have to be compact. So something that I talked about with the Lyapunov exponent, a condition that I did not include, which because it just would have made things a little bit confusing, is that, for example, if you know about attractors, if you have, so you can think of having a sink which draws all of the things into it, but you can have the opposite of a sink where it pushes things away from it, right? So that's like an inverse attractor, and that would also have a stretch factor that looks like chaos, or a Lyapunov exponent, if you want to call it the technical thing. But the reason it's not chaotic is because that system will just diverge away to infinity. And that's not what chaos is. Chaos the points need to diverge, but they also need to be like compact within this finite space, meaning that, like, for the Lorentz, I kind of said this when I said the Lorentz butterfly looks like something that you could hold in your hand. This is actually that's actually what inspired that particular phrase, is that one of the conditions for chaos is that it needs to be, the phase space needs to be compact. And that's kind of what I was alluding to with that. I don't remember the periodicity condition. Amar says period 3 implies chaos. However, I think, Amar, you're talking about discrete maps, like logistic maps, and like a logistic map rather. Correct me if I'm wrong there, which the conditions on what it means for a discrete map to be chaotic is different than the conditions on a differential equation to be chaotic. I think it's been so long. Compact sective periodic orbits, I think, is commonly used as a condition. But periodic, you could have a compact set of a simple harmonic oscillator, but that would not be that would be a compact set of periodic orbits, but that would not be chaotic, right? So one thing, I said this, I kind of regret the choice of words actually for the stretch factor. I made a little bit of a boo-boo in the way that I called it in the video. So the stretch factor, the way that I originally wrote it in the video, should actually be the exponential of the Lyapunov exponent. But then I accidentally treat them kind of interchangeably. Nothing really changes, like the same, it's still the same thing. But that's why the stretch factor can go negative, even though if you look at the way that I originally wrote that equation where I said the new size is equal to the old size times the stretch factor, it doesn't make sense if the stretch factor can become negative. And that's because actually what I should have said is that the stretch factor is the exponential of the Lyapunov exponent. So that is a slight mistake. Nothing really changes, just changes the boundary of the value that you would consider is or isn't chaos. So if I had done it correctly, actually so the wrong way where I said that they're interchangeable is that the boundary between non-chaos and chaos is at 0. But if I had done it correctly, the boundary between chaos and non-chaos is at 1. And that's really the only thing that kind of changes there. So that was a small mistake. I think like the videos are supposed to be a little bit less rigorous and a little bit more kind of pop culture. I do not like being wrong, though. That was essentially being wrong, but I think the point still kind of got across. Yeah, so that was a unfortunate mistake, but it didn't really. Arnold's cat map. Sorry, I do need to now look at what I think I very vaguely remember seeing that. I do need to look up what Arnold's cat map is. Feel free to engage with me in the audience by looking it up on your own. Arnold's cat map. Not what I expected. But maybe, I mean, there's a lot of cats in the picture. I will have to read up more on it because this is very much down my alley. Periodic stop. I do like things that are named. Actually, this is something that I was thinking. This is one of the reasons why I was about to say I do like things that are named after potentially Arnold's cat. Like, is it named after his cat? I don't know. But this is actually one of the things that I was thinking about in making the video, and why I chose to call it the stretch factor. And this is something I've been thinking a lot about recently, is whether or not how much I like the idea or dislike the idea of things being like natural things, phenomena, or like things from physics that talk about nature being named after a particular person. And I don't really like that idea the more I think about it. Just because, like, if it's a thing about nature, then why is it like specific to that one person? Like, sure, they found it first, but like, I mean, they were alive 100 years before you, so I mean, they just had an upper hand there. But for example, I think it's okay to name something that's obviously not like a consequence of nature. It's just a question of where do you draw that line. So for example, if you come up with like a data analysis technique or something, it's fine to name it after yourself because there's nothing from nature to draw from. It's like you used your inspiration to come up with something. So for example, the time delay embedding, the time delay coordinates is also called embedding, is normally called Takens embedding or Takens embedding theorem. And that's okay because I don't, who else would have come up with that? That's not a natural, I mean, there are ways that you can kind of justify it, but it takes some creativity, so that's okay. But something like quantum mechanics, if it was called something like Schrodinger's mechanics, I don't think I would like that. And there's a nuance there. But then there's the question of where do you draw the line? Like, Newton's equations, for example. You could argue that they're like derived from nature, but they are actually wrong. So they are kind of like a model, right? Like they're objectively not correct. They're only like a model that works within this specific context. So does that count towards the nature aspect? So it shouldn't be named after Newton, or does it kind of come from the creativity aspect? And Newton did quite a lot creativity wise as well, so I'm okay with it. But that's something I've been thinking about. But this is actually part of the reason why I switched the name Lorentz for stretch factor. The other reason just being that I think there's like a practical reason to not name things after people, which is simply just that it's harder to remember. Like when you're learning it, like now, sure, I know what a Lyapunov exponent is, but if I was like during class and then just like I would forget like a week later. Oh, I forgot that I made tea. Sorry, 1 second. Wow, that is incredibly oversteeped. Ooh. It's just hard to like remember this thing, and I think a lot of that comes down to then people's perception of physics is a lot of memorization when it's really not. It's just a lot of these terms are named somewhat poorly to the point where they're hard to remember, and I feel like I would remember something like stretch factor a little bit more. I would remember stretch factor a lot easier in a test or something like that rather than Lyapunov exponent, even though now I'm comfortable with it, but at the time I wasn't. And exactly as Kat mentioned, like this is exactly like the is math invented or discovered debate. I'm gonna slightly knock the microphone. I think it's a really interesting kind of quote unquote discussion that one could have. I don't know if it's a meaningful discussion. I wouldn't like be like, oh hey guys, let's rename everything right now because of not David's Stardew Valley stream opinions on who should be named after what should be named after whom. But if somebody wants to cite the stream for arguments, not that it would be good. Sorry, I'm just some tea. Didn't it come from Whitney outside of nonlinear dynamics? What are you referring to there? Reminds me of the mold effect. Yeah, I think that's the mold effect thing is super interesting, and I think if anybody's unfamiliar with it, Steve Mould, you probably know who Steve Mould is. I mean, especially after like the YouTube network video where it's like he's in the top 10 of people who subscribe to me, subscribe to Steve Mould. So you probably know who Steve Mould is. I think that's really interesting. I think it's also interesting that you have something like the Parker square, Hawkins embedding theorem. Didn't it come from Whitney outside of? I don't know enough about the history. I don't remember. I think yeah, I don't. I'm gonna have to read up on that. Yeah. So you have something like the Parker Square, right, where it's like it's named after these like people from YouTube videos, and I think that's something. I think that's something kind of interesting. That's something that I think it's interesting from like a historical perspective because that it's not a thing that could have ever happened before, right? The idea of naming these things after effectively like math enthusiasts on a popular social media thing because that just didn't exist up until like 20-ish years ago. I think that aspect is really interesting from just like a scientific history perspective. Not that I know much about that, but I just think it's yeah. Sorry, just reading back now, but yeah, if we'd called Newton's equations the equations, then we'd have to rename it. Yeah, and that's the other thing is that like you could have like to Amar's point, you could have something named so generically that it kind of wraps back up because there's equations of motion is just like such a generic term where so many different fields of physics have their own kind of quote-unquote equations of motion. Like you could think of Maxwell's equations as equations of motion, right? So if you were to do this whole kind of stripping away all the names and naming it just after like the thing that it is, then classical mechanics would have its equations of motion, and then quantum mechanics would have its equations of motion, and you rely on the context of the class that you're in to understand which equations of motion that you're talking about. So there is, we have to name things distinctly. I agree with that. It's just a question of if something is derived from nature, does it make sense to name after like some one person that just happened to be alive 100 years ago before there was like stiff competition between these guys? Also, if you're just tuning in, the cat's name is Not Dog, if I remember correctly. That was Cat's idea, and I'm gonna have to call it Not Dog in all future Stardew Valley runs. I appreciate that. Moving like well, things that can be disproved. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, but I mean, do we have a theory that is? Oh, I don't even have turnips to plant. Yeah, for Matt's little theory. Sorry, I hope that wasn't too loud. I don't get very enthusiastic, but I think the Fermat's thing is a perfect example. And like Fermat's stuff, that's not. I never really did a lot of. I think if I remember correctly, a lot of that comes from number theory. I never really took a course in number theory. But oh man, like, cause it's fairly famous on YouTube, so naturally, like, I've seen videos on it. But oh man, like, if you asked me to like, oh, what is Fermat's little theorem versus what is Fermat's blah 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 and so on and so on, it's just not very helpful, and it's just kind of confusing, and I feel bad for any mathematician who's doing that. Yeah, and half of the things are named with Euler. Yeah, I mean, for some reason, I found that Euler's stuff hasn't suffered for it as much, but I think that's mainly because in physics, there's only a couple of things that you use regularly that are named after Euler directly. But I think if I was doing more pure mathematics, then I would agree quite a bit more. Are you going to start doing streams? So Drew asked something that I wanted to ask you all, which is that, well, not ask. Maybe ask's not the right word. One thing that, so I'm not going to stream very often. I just find social interaction to be mentally exhausting. Like, this is very difficult for me in a YouTuber kind of sense of the word difficult. But one thing that I would like to do, and I've said this on the last stream, and I didn't do it, so don't take this as any sort of me suggesting that I am going to do it. But one thing that I would like to do is that because making the video, sorry, I'm just gonna take another sip of tea. Making the video takes a lot of time out of actually practicing Blender. And so I feel like my Blender abilities sometimes tend to stagnate because I'm just focusing on making the videos rather than practicing on how to use Blender better, with the exception of the last video, the one from yesterday, because there I was actually kind of actually actively practicing Blender while making the video. But I kind of wouldn't mind doing some Blender chill streams where like it's just like literally it's just me sitting down doing some Blender practice. I would try to do something that's like not related to the video, but maybe could be used in a future video, just so I don't like spoil what the video is. But I kind of wouldn't mind doing something like that, just because it would kind of force me to practice a little bit more. Because like I said, I'm not particularly good at Blender. So maybe that's something I would consider doing in the future. Although I will actually not be able to do it for the next like 4 months for reasons that I will talk about in a second. Catching up with the. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so I got a So part of the reason why I made the YouTube channel to begin with, and if anybody is interested in making a YouTube channel, I highly recommend this being the approach that you take, is that I don't really have any desire to be a YouTuber, but instead, I originally, before science, I came from an arts degree, or an arts background rather. This is like high school. I was going to go, coming out of high school, I was going to go to arts college. Um, and in arts, part of learning arts stuff is that they really stress the importance of making a portfolio that you can show to future employers. And so the Not David channel is essentially a portfolio that I can show to potential future employers. So I highly recommend treating YouTube as something like that if YouTube is something that you're interested in doing, because then as a even if the channel doesn't really work out for you, you still have something that you can show for it. And this is exactly why Not David videos take so long to make, is because it is strictly just because, you know, I'm trying to use. Why does it keep? I'm trying to make it something that I feel happy enough that I would actually present to a potential future employer. So I'm willing to take that extra little time to kind of put that effort into it. And so recently, I did actually end up getting a internship for a astrophysical observatory in Germany. So I will be going to Germany in mid-January for about 4 months. I'm still going to be making YouTube videos. Like, they hired me because of YouTube, and I will be helping with their YouTube channel because they do like scientific outreach on stuff like that. So I'll still be making the YouTube videos, but I won't be able to kind of do something like this for a long time, which is partially why I wanted to do this today, is just to relax a little bit after releasing the latest video. And I'm just like, I was thinking about doing a Blender stream today, but I was like, you know what, I just want to, you know, hang out for a little bit. Thank you, I appreciate it. Yeah, I was super excited to get that position. I'm super excited to be able to go to Germany for a little bit. It's 3 months, and then I'll take a month off just to kind of go around Europe and see family that I haven't seen in a long time. It might, I don't know that it will delay the videos any more than they were delayed while I was making the videos during the course of my PhD. So I'm still going to make the videos. I'm still going to do stuff like that. That's assuming everything goes to plan, which we'll see. I don't know. So yeah, I'm super excited because they have like a whole kind of pipeline of how they produce videos and stuff like that. And I think that'd just be a good learning experience. It's not something that I had, like, because Not David is just like, it's just me. So I think it'd be a really good learning experience in order to see how kind of more big productions are made. Do I speak German? I don't really speak German. Right before, in my first year of, right before I started university, I did spend about a week in Austria, which really made me appreciate the German language. And so when I started university, I did take a year of German, and I learned quite a bit, but I have forgotten quite a bit because that was a while ago now. I find that I can read it better than I can understand it or speak it. But hopefully I'll get a little bit of opportunity. The place that I'm going to is very much a international kind of town, because it's essentially like a research town, just full of universities and stuff like that. So I suspect that German knowledge won't be like crucial there, which is good, but also I would like to pick up more German or re-pick up. I don't want to say the name of the channel just because I don't know whether or not I'm allowed to. But hopefully, I do at least understand that much chaos. Yeah, there's like a sentence. Actually, it's cat related because we had to make up like um a conversation between you and your partner, and it was like something like um mine was very cat based because I spent a lot of time just talking about my two cats at the time. One of them is still around, Olga, who was featured in the video, but the other one has passed away since, unfortunately. Um, but yeah, there is this one German sentence I think that I can vaguely remember that is very cat heavy, but I'm not going to repeat it now because I'm just gonna in my mind, I think I can say it fairly well, but I'm like, no, it's just gonna be used against me in the future probably. So I'm not even gonna try. But I'm very excited to try and relearn some German in order to talk about cats in German. Um, I found go buy some more turnips. I found so in Canada um, we have to take French courses, and I've taken quite a bit of French. I think from junior, I used to live in Quebec, the French part of Canada, but that was like when we first moved to Canada, so that was a long time ago. I don't really even count it. But then from junior high up until grade 11, I took French classes. And I feel like in that, how many years is that? 5, 6 years that I was taking French classes, I think I learned less French than I did German in the 1 year that I took. Thank you, Apples. I appreciate you stopping by. How long have I been playing for anyway? Where does it say? How long have I been talking for? What time is it now? 2:40. Okay, well maybe I've been talking for an hour and 40 minutes. Maybe around 3 o'clock or something, I'll call it quits as well. Like I said, this is very oh Lord, Chaos, you're really you're really putting me on the spot here. Can I also speak French? I think is what it's asking. I found French to be much more difficult to learn than German, and I don't know what it is. It just doesn't jive with me. It just does not jive with me. I think part of it is that if anybody knows the word for if anybody knows the word for bird, for example, in French, which is oiseau, it is not spelt at all how like an English speaker would kind of even begin approaching spelling the word oiseau, or the word for bears, for example, which is, oh god, ours. I know the H is not very correct there, but and that word is just spelt, yeah, oiseau, right? Like no no English speaker would hear the word oiseau and think it's spelt like that. I think it's very, very close if it's not correct. And ours is spelt like ours, like HOURS. And there's just this weird disconnect that's in my mind between the spelling of a word in French and how it's said. Like, if you asked me to if you said a word and then you spelt it and asked me to spell it, I would not be able to get it right. But then if you gave me the spelling of that word and you were like, what word is this? I'd be like, I have no idea, even though it's like the same word, right? I'd be like, I have just no clue whatsoever. Just like, and even we, and I don't know how much of this is a problem with French versus Quebec French, which is super fascinating to me, is the Quebec French versus French kind of thing. Does it not have? Does it not have Chaos? Does it not have an H? Is it not HOURS? Is it really OURS? So where I was living in Ontario for my master's, I was living in Ottawa, and Ottawa is unique in that it is, I think, the most bilingual of um, the major Canadian cities. And I would just be walking around, and I would keep hearing people say "wah," which took me probably about 3 months to learn was actually "we." And I don't know if which is correct. Maybe "we" is wrong, and maybe "wah" is correct. But if "wah" is correct, I would not, as an English speaker, I would not think that it's spelt as "o-u-i," right? Um, and that's just something about it. And so I was walking around like for a long time, and I was just thinking, "Hi, Yedster," and I was just like, "Why are people just constantly saying wah, wah everywhere? Everywhere is wah." And for a long time, I literally thought it was like, I thought it was like the French version of like is what I mean to say. I thought it was the French version of I thought maybe like when French people they say wah. I was like, and I was like, but that just can't be it. Um, and it wasn't until like a long time later that well, not like a long, but like an, longer than it should have, that I learned that actually, no, that's just how you say we. I was like, oh no, I've been misinterpreting a lot of conversations then. um, yeah, written, yeah, exactly. Um, I would love to come learn Swedish, Max. I would genuinely love that. But yeah, I've definitely found German to be much easier with regards to that, and I think a lot of it is just there's a lot more similarities between French and English and German than there is between English and English and French. So I hope to maybe pick up at least a little bit of German. Maybe there's hope for it considering that I do know a little bit about it, but um, yeah, I went to Ottawa for my master's specifically in hopes of relearning French, and that did not happen at all, unfortunately. But I do know a little bit of French at least. Um, Debating whether or not to even bother. I don't know if the French discussion is boring or not, but yeah, English is not phonetically consistent either. I'm not trying to suggest that it is. English is because English is not my first language either. Like I don't come from Canada. I come from Europe. And so I remember learning English. Well, I remember first learning French because we were in Quebec, and then I learned English. And so like I remember it being a nightmare, right? I'm not saying that I'm not trying to suggest that English is easier to learn or something like that. All I'm saying is that from somebody who is now effectively an English speaker, um, learning French from that perspective is very very difficult. Um, and honestly, I think there could be like a math/science related video in that on its own, like maybe some sort of network similarity thing between like similarities like between language. I'm not sure. It's something that I briefly thought about, but I think that would need to be like almost like a collaboration video. It's not something that I know enough about, but it's something that I'm immensely interested in. A lot of the comments from like the ums video, for example, were about the different ways that people in different cultures say and I think that is super super interesting. My native language is it's a mix. Well, I'm not gonna say just to keep the not David mystique. My native language is not English. Is the you gave me not dog, so I will give you not English. Um, yeah, it's my native language is not English. um, yeah, English. Um, What was I about to say? I was about to say something. I don't remember what. Completely forgotten what I was talking about. Shoot. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. It was the ums video. Yeah, there's a lot of really super fascinating discussions from people about like just the different ways that people say these, like they're not words, but like ums. But actually, I was thinking about the same thing for the cat purring video too, because something that I'm really interested in is like a hobby, not really a hobby, but like something I'm really interested in is the different ways that people what's the word, phoneticize or whatever animal sounds across different languages is super interesting. And if there is some way to tie that into like a math video or something like that, I would genuinely love to do a video on that, because even just prior to the release of the cat purring video, I was like looking up the different ways that people say like meow across languages. And there's obviously a lot of like similarities and stuff like that. I'm guessing that a lot of those came from some like original, like you can trace the way that, for example, meow I think is very similar in like French and English and German and stuff like that. Like they're spelt differently, but the sound that you end up producing is very similar. And that's probably because people were saying those words a very long time ago when those languages. Is it an onomatopoeia? I think that's correct if I remember. That might be correct. Yeah, so that's super interesting to me. But then you have languages that are much more culturally distant from English, and the ways that they say cat, or the way that they not say cat, but rather the way that they say the word or the onomatopoeia, I guess, for the sound that animal makes. It's just super fascinating. It's just super interesting. And cat's only one such example. Like obviously you have one for each animal, I guess. So if there was like a dream video of mine to make, it would be a video on something sciencey, mathy related, on the evolution or the space, like geographic distribution of how cats or how different animals like make sounds in different languages. I think that's like that's just like, I have no idea how you'd go about making a video like that, but I think that would just be the most that's yeah, that's super fascinating to me. Yetster asks, what's your educational background? Thank you for the nice comment. Also, it's I did my undergrad in physics. Actually, let me go back a little bit further. In high school, I was an art student. I came out of high school going instead in university. I first started off in geology, then I switched into astrophysics, and then I switched into physics within the span of like all of those switches were within like 1 year. So I finished my undergrad in physics with a minor in math. Then I did my master's in quantum mechanics, and I just finished my PhD in complexity physics, or more specifically neurophysics. Although our department doesn't actually have that label, like the degree is in complexity physics, but my actual topic was in neurophysics. So having to do with the brain, like applying physics to the brain and stuff like that. Yeah, so hopefully that kind of answers your question. Meanwhile, laughing sounds almost the exact same. I'm wondering if that's like strictly true. Although, I mean, yeah, it definitely does sound essentially the same across all languages. I guess there's really only one way that we can produce laughs. I'm just asking from, because like there's those videos like online or whatever where it's like people laughing in funny ways, and I'm just wondering I'm just wondering if there's something to that. The other, while we're on the topic of like videos that I would like to do, but I highly doubt that I ever will be able to do it. If you've done a degree in physics, no, closed down once. If you've done a degree in physics, then you've probably come across partition functions. And partition functions are perhaps one of the most important concepts in all of physics. And I think I would consider them like the final boss of scientific communication. If you can explain a partition function to a lay person, or at least like, you know, like I aim my videos to like a senior high school student or to like lower university students, something like that, like first, second year university student. That's the level that if you can explain a partition function using essentially no math at that kind of level, I think like you win scientific communication. Like that's it. And I don't think I can explain. I definitely not now, and I don't know that I'll ever be able to explain partition functions at that level. But that is one video that's always going to essentially like haunt me to some extent. In my Japanese was the one that I was thinking of when I was, but I couldn't remember exactly how it was said. I couldn't remember exactly how Japanese said the word for, or the sound for a cat, but that was the one that I was thinking of. And yours is very similar to what I believe. I think in Japanese it's nyan, so yours is very similar. I've been wanting to make YouTube videos about math, but I'm a social sciences student, so I think there's a really good place for videos like that, Dirt. Like, I'm sorry, I'm never going to be able to say your name. Because I think a lot of students, so I TA'd a lot of non-physics students, and I loved TAing non-physics students. That's actually like this one of the in the opening of the most recent videos, I said something along the lines of I'm not a huge fan of how we teach physics to non-physics students, and that was born from my TAing of non-physics students, because I would be in the lab and I'd have to be like explaining, oh, this is how an inclined plane works, and it's just like, and they're life science students, they're gonna go doing like they're doing things like you know, they want to go to med school or something. It's like, you know, I I cannot enthusiastically act like, oh yeah, this this inclined plane thing. Maybe when when you're putting a patient on a stretcher and your patient also happens to be a cylinder, you'll know how how they'll roll off the stretcher or something. You know, like when you're a physics student, you have to take courses like chemistry and stuff like that. And at the time, even though I appreciate it much more now, at the time I was like, I don't want to be learning this. I want to be learning physics. So why do I have to pretend like life science students are going to be interested in learning about inclined planes when I'm not even interested in inclined planes? And so what I tried to do is try to reframe the labs in terms of learning how to use things like Microsoft Excel or whatever Excel spreadsheet thing that you like to use, right? And a lot of people were really appreciative about that, because they were like, oh, we don't learn this in our life science courses. Like, we don't learn how to use Excel, which is mind blowing to me, because in reality, that's one of the main tools that they're going to be using if they ever do some sort of research. And what I think a lot of people within the life sciences or within biology or something don't realize, especially if you want to continue doing research in those fields, is that the majority of your time doing research in biology or life sciences or whatever is not done in doing biology. It's actually done doing statistics and math. And so actually, I think there is especially if you kind of, I don't know what your background in math is specifically, your Dulac, but like if you could, maybe refine your math background and then make videos that are like catered towards being like, hey, psychology students, like math is important because you're going to be doing a lot of it. I think there's a really good place for videos like that, and I think not only that, I think it would be fill an important niche as well, because we need students in those fields to, I don't think that they need to know advanced mathematics or stuff like that, but they need at least a bit of a stronger background. And I think a channel, what's their name? StatQuest. I think StatQuest does something similar, and I have a lot of respect for a channel like that where they're trying to teach statistics and math to students who I think traditionally don't have the opportunity to take those courses when they really should. Yeah, enthusiastic psychology students. I mean, I can't blame them, right? Like, I can't blame those students for being unenthusiastic or unenthusiastic, right? Because, and that's something that I do try to address with my videos, is because a lot of the times the way that we teach these concepts is just not tailored towards people. Like they're statisticians who are like, oh yeah, you guys are going to love learning about statistics because I love statistics, and then they just oftentimes presented in this kind of abstract way. And I think for those students, you really kind of have to start catering it a little bit more towards their needs and interests, right? And that is kind of what I try to do with my videos, where it's like, yes, I'm trying to like explain this math concept to you, but it's always through the lens of something stupid and fun, right? Like nobody in their real world is going to care about whether or not cat purring is chaotic, right? But if this is like your intro to applications of chaos, and maybe you're interested in doing seizure prediction analysis or heartbeat analysis or something like that, where these tools are actually used, maybe this video about cat purring gives you ideas for something that you could use in your own research, or at the very least kind of play around with, and then make a YouTube channel about the things that you may have found. So I really can't blame people for being unenthusiastic about those things, because it could just be that it just wasn't taught to them in a way that really, spoke to their wants and needs in terms of like academics. So if you do end up doing something like a YouTube channel, you have this background coming from a psychology perspective. You know what they are interested in and what they're not interested in, and so you can maybe kind of lean in a little bit more in that direction. Of course, like in my videos, I very rarely go too in depth into like the math, but the idea is that like it's just to give you the idea that this thing exists and maybe could be useful to you. And if you are particularly interested in it, go and maybe read up on it on your own. That's kind of what I try to strive, because usually the way that I learn best is through reading up things on my own. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. But yeah, definitely highly recommend. And oh yeah, this is something that I want to, I guess I should clarify. When I was talking about, when I was making the suggestion that if you want to make a YouTube channel, I highly recommend that you treat it as like a portfolio. Keep in mind that only really works if the topic of those videos kind of is in line with the jobs that you want to be doing at some point, right? That if you make a Minecraft Let's Play channel, which if that's what you want to do, like go all ahead, right? But that's not going to be a good item in a portfolio for maybe you want to do, I don't know, data science with some data science firm or something like that, right? That's not going to be a good portfolio. Like it's a YouTube channel. Maybe you even get like a lot of subscribers, right? But it's specifically because in my case, like the in my case, it's physics and math and statistics and stuff like that. That is the particular reason why it becomes a good portfolio item. So again, going back to your going back to you, Durdlek, it's even if you made these videos and even if nobody watched them in the end, it wouldn't be time lost because you could still use that to be like, hey, listen, I am motivated well beyond the things that I am required to do by either my university or my degree or my high school or something like that. And employers love seeing that. This I also will add now as a plug, not for myself, but for your own university or something like that. If you are in undergrad right now, especially if you're in something like math and physics, and you have some sort of student-led student kind of group, I don't really know what they're usually called, student association, stuff like that, get involved in those things because employers, and not only employers, this is true even if you want to stay in academia, people that give you grant money, they love seeing this extra going above and beyond and kind of serving your community. And I think if you make psychology, education, math videos, that could be interpreted as kind of serving the broader psychology community or something like that. Get involved in those things. I did not do that while I was in my undergrad, and I highly regret it. I did get into it for my PhD, and I'm so thankful that I did because it really opened a lot of doors for me, I think, in terms of grants and scholarships and things like that. It was really important. So if you're in high school right now, or if you're in undergrad or even a master's or grad school, and you haven't done these kind of like extracurricular, getting involved with your students' like, I don't necessarily mean the clubs. I don't know what the word for it is, but it's like the ones like they make like group events or something like that. For us, we call it the Graduate Student Association. It's often called something like that. For undergrads, it was just the Students' Union or something like that. Highly, highly, highly recommend that you get involved in something like that. Or even just make like education YouTube videos, maybe put a little bit more kind of effort into them so that they're nice and presentable. And then you can be like, hey, look, I didn't just do a degree in statistics. I know how to communicate this stuff, and I love communicating this stuff. And here is proof of that. This was something that this is something that I'm really passionate about, so I'm just going to keep rambling about this particular topic until somebody interrupts me. Sorry, sippity. But I recently asked one of my friends who she did a master's and then she switched into industry and is very happy in her job in industry. I asked her, should I include the Not David channel on my resume? And she was like, yeah, no problem. Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to see you're also a Drawfee fan. Yeah, I'll probably be wrapping this up soon as well. I just want to make this one last little point, which is I asked her, should I include Not David on my resume if I was to ever apply with something like your work? And she works a lot in like data analysis and stuff like that. And she said something along the lines of she would include the YouTube channel before she'd even include the fact that I have a PhD. And the reason is just simply because like it shows that you're passionate about communicating with people. It shows that you're able to do things that you are kind of going above and beyond what you're kind of expected to. It shows time management. it shows all of these different things, um, and and to an employer, that's often worth much more than the fact that you have a PhD. And now I'm using the example of a YouTube channel in my case because that is what I'm doing, but all of those things are true if you do any sort of kind of like academic um, extracurricular thing where you're kind of like going the above and beyond to do things to like engage with your community and stuff like that. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully um, if you are in that position, like I said, I highly. I will probably call it quits now as well. I'm actually in the process of part of the reason why it's probably more echoier. I don't. Hopefully the stream isn't too echoey. If I do these more often, I'm going to maybe invest in some sort of sound isolation foam. But like I mentioned a little bit earlier, because I am going to Germany, I'm in the process of moving out of my apartment. So actually, all of the things that were on my walls before have just been they're down now. So I'm gonna go back to doing some stuff like that. Um, Thanks for the advice. I'm a senior in high school and I've always wanted to start a YouTube channel about physics, but it seems so daunting. Your videos. Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing that I can recommend there is, especially with the comment, your videos always look so professional. I mean, go back to the first video and watch my first video, and you'll just see that it's just not the same at all, right? And you'll kind of also notice that the first video almost doesn't really say anything, kind of looking back on it, and that's partially. Oh man, Amar, thank you. Well, thank you, Amar, for dropping. I can't. Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, go get some sleep, please. Um, the first video, I almost kind of made it. Obviously, like I put effort into it. I didn't want anything to be wrong. Everything I said in that video, I meant, but I wanted to use it as like a jumping point. I knew that it would be relatively low quality relative to the things that I would make in the future, but I wanted something that I could be like, okay, let's just get my foot in the YouTube door. So if you have a topic that like maybe you're really passionate about, you want to make a YouTube video about like this, you have this really good idea and you want to make a YouTube video about it, don't make that your first video. Do like think of something that you can be like, okay, I like this topic, I think it's interesting, but I'm going to use it as my practice video. I think do something like that and then do a couple of those videos and then make that one video that you were really passionate about. For me, for example, it was the Pokemon Type Advantage video. That was the video I would say like prior to the Pokemon Type Advantage video, I would say that those were almost like trial videos for Not David. And I would really say that the channel starts at the Pokemon Network video. And once I made the first two channels, that's also, or sorry, first two videos, that's also when I got the idea for the YouTube network video. And I knew that I couldn't do that right away just because I didn't have the skills to do it and I didn't have the subscriber count to do it. But I knew that in the future I would have that, or hopefully at least the skills, maybe not the subscribers, but luckily it worked out. So I had these ideas for videos that I wanted to do a long time in advance, and I just tried to. There are videos that I've always every video that I made a topic about, I've been passionate about that topic. But some of them I knew that I was like, okay, this video is also just going to help me kind of get a little bit further in the YouTube door, and that's especially true for the first two videos. So if there's something like that that you're like super passionate about, maybe make one or two videos prior to that and put all the effort that you can into those, but you can then be like, okay, I've tried, and now my third video, this is where I'm really going to really going to like knock it out of the park. And that's really what the Pokemon Network video was for me, even though I have criticisms of that video. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you everybody for tuning into this incoherent rant of Yeah, I'm really not good at the streaming thing. Maybe I should do it a little bit more often just to get a little practice. I do really enjoy talking to you guys. I try to reply to like all the YouTube channels, even though it starts giving me carpal tunnel. That's just because like you guys make some really good points, make some really funny comments and stuff like that. I really enjoy interacting with you guys. I'm just not very good at good at it. And maybe in the future, hopefully, I can become a little bit better at it. But thank you so much for tuning into this mess of a stream. I hope you got something out of it. I don't know. Yeah, that's all. Thank you. Now I need to figure out how to stop the stream. Okay, there it is. All right, bye everyone. Happy New Year, by the way. Happy New Year. Um, Tomorrow, Happy New Year if it is tomorrow for you. Um, Bye.